Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Gospel Music Report. Now, if you've not already noticed, this episode is a little different from the first, and that's because it's the introduction to an additional format I'm going to be implementing into the episode rotation. I've always intended to interview people, and as I can get to them, I'll be sprinkling them in here and there as schedules allow. These won't be written commentary pieces, but rather just simple discussions between myself and whoever I get to sit down with. Now, I've done my best to make it somewhat visually stimulating, but this was an over-the-phone interview, as I'm assuming most of them will be. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoy it. But before we jump in, I wanted to say thank you to all of you who liked, commented, and shared Episode 1 with your friends. I greatly appreciate the response and the feedback. Also, thank you very much to those who have graciously decided to support me on Patreon over at patreon.com/gospelmusicreport. You are the people who are going to keep this moving forward, and for that, I'm especially grateful. Ken and Jean Grady are the founders and hosts of the television show Gospel Music Today. Through the years, they've traveled and interviewed hundreds of artists while featuring just as many on their broadcast, and though today they're certainly no strangers to the gospel music world, this style of music was nowhere to be found in their background. In 1988, they were living separate lives in the town of Coventry, Rhode Island, where Ken was a school teacher and Jean was a director of music.
I'd become the director of the Patuxent Valley Community Chorus, which was a local community chorus in the town that we lived. And Ken was a school teacher. Our community chorus met at the school once a week, and he was a school teacher there. And also he was an advisor for the radio station at the high school, and so his kids provided the lights and sound for our shows. And it was through that I met him, and it just so happened that the president of the chorus said the first Christmas, he said, be sure you contact Ken Grady to do the lights and sound for your Christmas program. And I said, well, at that time I said, what does he do? Because I didn't know. And he said, well, he's a single guy, he's a school teacher right here. And I said, you know somebody that's single? I said, I needed a date for the Christmas program, or to the Christmas party for work. And so this person became the matchmaker to try to get us together, and he had to work quite hard to do that. We would see one another on rehearsal nights, and it was the course of about 5 years before we got married, but we just dated during that 5 years, and so that's basically how we met, and he continued working with the chorus. He became the MC for our chorus programs, and still had the kids there that were doing the lights and sound for us. So that's how we met.
I personally assumed that Ken had always intended to be in broadcasting, but although he was familiar with radio, he actually went to college to become a school teacher. Later, I asked them both how they came to the decision to start their show, but at this time in Ken's life, it wouldn't be until nearly 20 years later when he and Jean would meet. However, someone else did have their eye on him.
As soon as I walked out of that college, the draft board had their eye on me. This is in the Vietnam era. So I started teaching, and then 8 weeks later got drafted. So my actual broadcasting started at that point.
Because I knew that you had done broadcasting when you were in the military,
right?
And I guess I just assumed that you had trained for that purpose, but that's just something that sort of fell into your lap.
Yeah, well, I had done college radio, and I had played in a band during college, so I was familiar with all the local disc jockeys in the Providence area, including the disc jockeys at what was the big station then, WPRO in Providence. So when I got drafted, I went through basic training, and I got sent to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and got trained as an artillery surveyor. That's the guy that sits up on top of the hill and directs which way the guns are supposed to fire. So they held me at the school after the school was done, because I did very well in the school. They held me there and made me an instructor in the school for officers. So when I eventually got orders to go to Korea, by that time my pals there in the Army were captains and majors, and I said, what do I need to do? I don't want to go to Korea and sit on the 39th parallel directing guns in case there's a second Korean War breaks out. So they told me what to do. I got the guys at WPRO to write letters of recommendation saying what a great broadcaster I was. They had no clue. And when I got to Korea, they drop you in a big warehouse when they send you to a country and then distribute everybody out to where they're going to go. Well, I was still sitting there at the end of the week, so I went to the office and told the clerk in the office, who was even dumber than I was, I said, I think there's been a mistake. I'm still stuck here, and I think the problem is I was supposed to go to the American Forces Radio and Television, and I think maybe somebody lost my paperwork. So the kid picks up the phone and calls the American Forces Radio and Television headquarters in Seoul. There's a civilian in charge of it, and he has the paperwork that I sent him sitting on his desk when the clerk calls him. So the clerk explains what's going on. The civilian knows that the clerk is just some poor guy that got conned into this, but he says, that sounds right, send him over here. So I spent my 2 years in the military reading the news on television and playing records on the radio. And that was the beginning of what we do now. You know?
That's how broadcasting really started for you.
Yeah.
So it's my understanding that neither of you grew up listening to this style of music. I mean, especially you, Ken. I mean, Jean, your father was a Baptist preacher.
Yes, he was a Southern Baptist preacher, but we really didn't have Southern gospel music. I mean, some gospel songs, some hymns, but back when I was growing up, the Southern gospel music as we know it today would have been more in the Pentecostal churches, not so much in the Baptist churches. And so in some cases it was foreign, a little foreign to me. But and definitely not for Ken, and the way that we were kind of introduced to it is that we had a musical theater in Warwick, Rhode Island, that Ken and I used to like to go to, and we happened to get tickets to a Statler Brothers concert, and we went to see the Statler Brothers, and at the end of their concert they did the gospel songs. And we fell in love with them, and it was just shortly after that Bill Gaither was doing a homecoming series up in Worcester, Massachusetts, and you can hear that Ken's phone going off. So we went up there and just kind of got immersed in the music. We liked it, and I was a choir director at a church, so I started ordering choral music that really was Southern gospel music, some Mike Speck's cantatas and things like that. And the choir just ate it up. They loved it. And so that started what we were doing with Southern gospel. And then Ken continued it on with promotions.
So when you guys met and Ken was a teacher, what was the transition from where he decided that he wants to get back into his broadcasting and doing it with Southern gospel music?
Well, that really happened when I retired. I got back into television. One of the kids that had been on the radio station at the high school, a lot of them went on to work in radio and television, and I had been retired just a little while, and I got a phone call from a former student who was now working at Channel 6 in Providence and wanted to know if I wanted to come and work there part-time. So I did. So I got back into it, that way. We started the television show in Rhode Island of our own. Rhode Island had in those days, there were several local cable companies in Rhode Island, instead of like it is today where it's mainly a few big companies. There were all these, each town had its own little cable company, and they were all hooked together by microwave, and they had a channel that was devoted to religious broadcasting, and if you produced a show, they would put it on there for free, and it would run statewide. So we got back into it that way and used that show to promote the groups that we were having to come up to sing at the church, and that's how we got back into that. So the show that we do now is technically not a full-time job, although it's a lot of hours. But
well, I mean, as you two have known, since you're here talking to me, you know that I've started my own show, and this is just the second episode. So I can understand that there be some difficulties, things that come up. For example, I record this out of my bedroom. I'm sitting in my bedroom right now, and I understand you two are in your studio.
Yes.
And I mean, for me personally, my studio, I just went to Lowe's and bought some wallboard and screwed it into my drywall, and I use on my laptop and my iPhone for the I've even rigged up my own homemade teleprompter using my phone and my Apple TV, and it's a long story. But so my biggest issue right now is just time and money. But you two have been doing this for how long has the show been going?
I think I've said 15 years for the past 3 years, but more than 15 years. Let's just put it there.
15 years plus.
15 years plus, that's right.
And you guys you've got your own studio designated for this. You've got studio lighting, cameras, official gear that you take with you when you go to your different shows that that we've seen. That's how you and I met.
That's right.
Correct.
So what have been some of your biggest hurdles in getting gospel music today to where it is today?
Well, I'll tell you, because I know that I saw the first topic of your, I guess yours is not a podcast because it's
no, it's kind of it's kind of labeled as a YouTube show, but
okay.
The idea started as a podcast because I started listening to podcasts years ago, and I like the concept, but
yeah.
Video format works best for this audience.
Yeah. Well, our biggest hurdle is the same one that you and a lot of other people face, and it's just simply money. We are two retired people that do this because we love to do it. And in the world of Christian broadcasting, the Christian broadcasting world is a pay-to-play world. Mm-hmm. And we want to play, but we don't want to pay.
Right.
So we're on KWHB in Tulsa, a Christian broadcasting station, and stations and 8 other stations in several states, and we don't pay. Mm-hmm. We just once in a while we'll ask, once in a while we'll wait until somebody asks us, and we'll do the show. But a lot of the television shows that are on currently on the satellite networks and everything, that can be a very expensive proposition. And what we try to do is make it look as good as we can. And Jean has music experience, I have broadcasting experience. We just try to use that experience to produce the best product that we can without spending a whole bunch of money. You described your studio in your bedroom. Well, our studio, where we do the studio segments of our show, is a room upstairs in our house where regular people would have a
media room.
Yeah, a pool table and a big screen TV. Instead of that, we have my editing computer and a little set for our show. But the set for our show, which we tried to make look like a pro level set, when people come up here and see it, and I'll say, well, you can have your own. Just go down to Home Depot with $75 and buy the stuff. And if you know how to put it together and make it look decent, you can do something with it.
One of the things that we will not sacrifice, though, in our show is quality, and I think that's been a success factor as we have seen shows come and go, and you realize now that there's going to be quite a bit of work in it, and a lot of times people find out they don't want to put that much work into it, but we have a steady show, and we have not certain rules, but certain things. We have a certain day that we record, and certain things that have to be done for the show, and then Ken does the production work on it. So there has to be a certain amount of dedication there, because if not, you just are going to get burnt out real fast.
Yeah, that's something. When I decided I thought about doing this for a while, and I've always wanted to do. I do a podcast with some friends about video games because I'm a nerd, and I've done some video games or some podcasts about Star Wars because I'm a nerd. And then I thought, well, another one of my passions is gospel music, and there's not really a lot of podcasts being done. And I thought, well, but the problem is that a good majority of the crowd doesn't get involved in that technology side of the media. So it would have to be a video show if I wanted to do anything. And then I realized, well, I don't want it to look bad. I don't want it to look like I'm holding my phone and I'm giving a video here and there, because people, if they're going to keep coming back to it, it needs to be something that looks professional. And then my other big issue for me right now is time, and like you mentioned, Jean, what a very important part of people returning is the consistency of knowing when it comes out. It comes out on the same date every week or every month or however it's released, and so I would like this to be a weekly show. It's still in the growth stages to where I've put it out there that I still have to work a full-time job, and I'm in the process of getting ready to move in the coming months. But when I get down to the base of what I want the show to be, I do want it to be a weekly show, and the content will vary between commentary pieces and interviews and whatever else. I mean, I'm still taking suggestions from people, but I definitely can understand that those would be two of my biggest hurdles, would be time and money. So,
yeah. And the money part of it, no matter what you do, because we don't charge for interviews and things like that, just a trip to, when we used to go to Louisville to the NQC, could end up being quite expensive, even though we're getting things for the show, between the hotel and the food and the booth space and things like that. Now, recently we've had some things open up where we are able to do more interviews without it being so costly, and that's just been a great thing for us to be able to do.
Well, I enjoy it, and you two have been good friends to me over the years, and I really appreciate your just being a contribution to the community, which is what I want this show to be. I mean, it needs more of that. One of the benefits of traveling and interviewing so many artists is not only getting to sit down with them, but really getting to know them on a level that not many people do. And with that comes some pleasant surprises along the way. With just one trip to the National Quartet Convention involving over 100 interviews, I asked Ken what some of their most favorite sit-down experiences have been.
There's two categories. Mm-hmm. There's ones that have become more serious interviews, and there's ones that have become more fun interviews. And probably the one that was the most fun is we were trying to interview Karen Peck in New River. And this was, I don't know if it was the last year the NQC was in Louisville or maybe the next to the last. The booth across from us was a guy selling suits and ties and stuff. And he
Right.
was he knew nothing about Southern gospel, by the way, but he went to these conventions and set up his booth. Well, he became very interested once he saw the people coming to our booth for interviews, and every male singer that came to us for an interview could go across the aisle and
Right.
pick out a free tie. So it was a great benefit to being on our show. But anyway, to get back to try to answer your question, we were trying to interview Karen Peck in New River, and Brian Free, I guess, was going to be next. And so he goes next door. Karen Peck had a purple dress on, so Brian Free goes next door and picks out a purple tie and goes and stands next to the camera and does his absolute best to see if he could distract Karen Peck by standing there with this ridiculous-looking purple tie and trying to get her attention. Well, finally she saw him, and things started to go to pieces at that point. And
Right.
then next along, just walking down the aisle, I think, comes Ray Dean Reese, who now he wants to get in on the show, and comes up and he wants to hire Karen and Susan to be his backup singers in the Kingsmen, and they didn't really want to do that. But finally, they decided to sing a song, so they sang "Beautiful Home," and Ray sang it, and Karen and Susan did the harmony vocals. And it was really one of my favorites.
I believe that's out on YouTube.
That is on YouTube, yeah.
Now,
You had one more. There was a serious,
Yeah.
more serious one. You said there were 2 interviews that stick out in your mind.
Yeah, the ones that that we've really talked about the nuts and bolts of Southern gospel is 2 of them. It's Mark Trammell is one. He likes to get into that stuff, and Gerald Wolfe likes to get into that. And we've had some good interviews with those 2 guys.
Ken also interviewed Bill Gaither
Yep.
one year. So it's been
Well, all 3 guys that know a lot about this industry,
Yeah,
what it takes. So, I guess let me ask the next question that leads us right into that. Is there anybody today who you've not interviewed yet, but you're still wanting to? Or have you got to everybody?
Well, no, we haven't run out of everybody yet, but we talked about this just earlier today. And these guys are not technically Southern gospel, but they really are the ones that got us into it. And we would really love to get at least one, or all would be wonderful, of the Statler brothers.
Oh, take it full circle.
Yeah.
take it full circle. That's right.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the night that we saw them at the Warwick Musical Theater, one of Ken's former students was working at the radio station that was sponsoring the concert. So he grabbed us as we were walking in the door. He says, "Come on, you're going to have your picture taken with the Statler brothers." So I have the framed picture of Ken and me with the Statler brothers. Now we would like to take it full circle and do the interview with them.
Before wrapping up our time together, I asked Ken and Jean a couple more questions, including what aspirations they still had for gospel music today. The conversation eventually led to discussing some of the differences between what we call the golden age of gospel music and our current industry, and just what hurdles artists are facing right now.
I think we've gone beyond what the plan was originally. We would still like to reach out to more audiences in different areas. You know, there's another thing we were just talking about. in the golden days of gospel music, back in the days of the original Blackwoods and the Statesmen, there were 2 factors. One was actual terrestrial radio, which really barely is alive nowadays. And the other one was television. You know, the Blackwoods especially were legitimate national television stars, and local television stations, produced or welcomed local programming. not infomercials, not selling items to clean your windows or whatever it is they sell. These were legitimate local entertainment programs. Or they would take the gospel singing jubilee, and that doesn't exist anymore either. So reaching out to different areas in television now is really difficult. But on the other hand, we didn't get into this to try to get rich or to become national television stars. But we would like to reach out to more areas, but it's a slow process.
But we have a big internet following, as well as the television. There is a big internet following out there and sometimes we don't even realize that, until we're in Memphis or we're, in Pigeon Forge and somebody just walks up, oh, what's your show every week? And we don't realize the impact of the internet.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think that goes along with just not realizing the impact that you two have, just with all the people that you come in contact with. I was just thinking about this the other day. I was telling somebody the other day when I started my own gospel group years ago. Well, not years ago. I guess it would have been.
You're not that old.
6 years ago. But I didn't really have anything. Moving forward, we didn't have any gear. We had to come up with, everything we wanted, and nobody really knew who we were. And I had a little bit of help with promotions and stuff like that. But I remember Ken got in touch with me just out of the blue and asked what I was using to sing on, and it still sticks in my mind, and it was a really big deal to me that he said, well, I've got these 3 Sennheiser wireless microphones and receivers that Jean used to use. She's not using them anymore. Do you guys want them? And, didn't offer a price or whatever, just sent them to me free in a box. I got them one day. And we used those the whole time we were there. I mean, that's what we sung on the entire time. And that was just, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, that helped we went and sang to all those different groups. I mean, you guys had a part in making that happen. And that was something I always appreciated. And that's something that a lot of people overlook. It's just something as small as that. I mean, that actually wasn't a small gesture. I mean, those are expensive microphones, but.
Well, that's nice to hear, though. For us, it's nice to hear that they got used.
They definitely got used.
You can further things along with that, and also with that, David. One of the things that we do on the show, one of the features that I do every week is a feature group, and I don't tell any of the groups ahead of time that they're going to be the feature group on the show, and most of the groups, to tell you the truth, I don't even know who they're going to be till I start researching out on the internet, or I see their name someplace, or I go find a group and I do a feature group on them. But believe it or not, that is the group that is going to help us the most, because they are going to tell their friends about gospel music today, and their friends will start watching it. A lot of more established gospel singers in established groups really don't need to tell a lot of people about us. They get interviewed by many different people, and they're on many different television shows. But when you take a group that's virtually unknown and you feature them on Gospel Music Today, then that's how the word gets out to many other people, because I send a press release and say, please share this with your social media friends. Some do, some don't. But those that do, then we have more people listen to our show.
Yeah. Well, I've always appreciated you too, and we talked about this when we started the phone call. My first interview ever in gospel music was with Ken, and so I just thought it would be right for me to make my first interview that I've ever done with you two, and so I thank you for being able to do this. I do have one more question, and Ken, you mentioned just a moment ago about the golden age, what you called the golden age in gospel music. In your time spent researching and watching and interviewing, what do you think has changed the most? And this might be a loaded question, but what do you think's changed the most in the gospel music industry since you first started doing this?
I think since we came on board, I don't know if the big changes have happened in that time period. There's an ongoing battle with the aging of the audience, I think, and what I described as the golden age. The groups had their own 15, 30-minute radio programs, many times live, and then went to recorded. Groups had their own local television programs. They had the Gospel Singing Jubilee, which so many people remember, and the family would watch that on Sunday morning, and that included the kids. So the kids were exposed to it at that point. And I mean, that was all before we started doing our program, but I think those things have really had an impact, and I don't think they've been really replaced with another way to reach the audience, the audience that needs to be reached. A younger audience would be nice, although I think you have to get to a certain age before you can really appreciate the meaning of a lot of the gospel songs. But there's no reason why kids wouldn't enjoy the programs and come to love the songs. But it's hard to get them exposed to it, I think, nowadays.
Yeah, that's. It has. I guess there's a lot of factors involved as far as the young people, because I've seen. I mean, me as a young person, the way I was raised, I immediately enjoyed, and it had a lot to do with my parents, my father, and him listening to the cathedrals and growing up and hearing their records and cassettes played, and it was sort of instilled into me. But I've since then, since I've I'm 30, I'll be 35 years old this year, and certainly have had chances to make my own decisions in which, what types of music I want to listen to and all that stuff. And I still very much have always loved this style of music. And I know that on the opposite side, being a performer in the industry, there's a lot of times you'll go to churches and they'll have something set aside for the younger crowd to do, as if they just know that there's no way that the young people are going to enjoy this.
That's part of the signs of our time, not only with technology, but remember back when they had the all-night singings, and for many years the only thing to do was their entertainment. That was their only entertainment, or listening to the Gospel Jubilee, and it was really special when they could go see a live performance. Now all person has to do is pick up their phone and go to YouTube, and they can watch any of it that they want. So
right.
I don't believe that Southern Gospel has kept up with the technology world, and I don't know how it could have been done anyway. But I think that's probably one of the issues now. There's just so much to fill our lives with. I mean, people don't even have time to go to church anymore, and that used to be what you did on Sunday morning.
Right.
So I think it's that same concept with Southern Gospel and with concerts. It's something you do now if you don't have anything else better to do.
It's difficult to compete with all the different avenues of entertainment that is out there. And it's one of the reasons why I sort of wanted to try to tap into this style of a show where people are using YouTube a lot more. I mean, most I don't know if this is, I mean, I can't speak for for everyone, but bringing this into something that a lot of people listening to this might not care about, but in the video games industry, the large majority of everyone involved in it, they get all of their content and information from YouTube. They're not reading magazines hardly anymore. They're not even necessarily going to websites as much even more other than YouTube, because it's so easy to go there and get all of your content. And you've got videos, and you've got, there's the visual stimuli, there's the audio stimuli. They get all of it right there. And even in our political culture today, there is a big movement happening on social media where a lot of the, we're hearing all about the fake news and about how all of this, the news sites are not being honest, and it's not real journalism anymore. It's just for, what they call clickbait and for, getting ratings and all this stuff. And so a lot of these personalities on YouTube are becoming more and more popular. And it's sort of where media is starting to go. And so I kind of wanted to capitalize on that and try to get into YouTube, to where it's easy for somebody, just to get on Facebook and, you post a YouTube link and they can click on it right there and they can see it and they can listen to it. Podcast is a little bit behind that. I listen to podcasts. A lot of people I know listen to podcasts, but not everybody does. So I wanted to get into the video format. But as far as what you mentioned earlier about there not being a lot of different options, that's one of the things I kind of wanted to tackle in a future episode, a future commentary video. The differences between, what we're calling the golden age and today, to where back then there wasn't a lot of competition. I'm not saying that they weren't good groups back then, because there certainly were, but going to a gospel concert used to be something that people, they'd get dressed up to do. It'd be almost like going to a ball or something. You'd make a night of it. And now it's just, there's somebody at our church and it's a free concert, and, there's not a huge drive to get there as far as motivation to be there. And so it's kind of been cheapened by the fact that there's so many other things out there, and there is a need for, I think, like you said, for this industry to compete with that, but it's just finding the correct avenue, the correct method, I think, to do that. That's the challenge.
Yeah. I think trying to relive and to try to hold on to the old days is not the answer. When I mentioned the old days of the shows on television, most people were lucky if they had 3 choices of what to watch on television. And when I started in broadcasting, there was a saying that if you owned a television broadcast license in any city in the country, it was like having a license to print money. It was a guaranteed fortune would be rolling in advertising. Well, television stations are struggling now. Newspapers are struggling now. Magazines are struggling now. Because of exactly what you said. There are so many different choices. And I think the world of Southern Gospel needs to look for opportunities and look for, nobody can predict what next year will bring, or what, even what next month will bring, but we can't be continually looking at the way it used to be. We have to look at the way it's going to be.
For more information on the Gradys and Gospel Music Today, you can find them online at gospelmusictoday.com, as well as Facebook and YouTube. Ken and Jean have dedicated the last 15 years of their lives to bring us news about the music we love, and I hope you've enjoyed learning just a little bit more about them. Well, I really appreciate both of you making yourself available to this and to me. I hope to do more interviews like this in the future, and I wanted to just shed some light on 2 people, you two people, that I really do appreciate you and care for you, and I'm really glad that our paths have crossed in the past and that we were able to do this. So thank you so much for
Well, we appreciate you
today.
too, and we just want, because this is a new idea with doing something with the video and everything, and we just want to wish you the very best, because like you said, we're not really sure which way the industry's going, and if we can find a way to reach more people, then it's going to be excellent. And so I applaud your efforts, David, for doing this, and thank you for having us as your first guest.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thanks.